My billionaire grandfather left my father $5 million. He left my mother $3 million. My brother got $2 million. And me? $50. Two $20 bills and one 10 slid across a mahogany table like a tip for bad service. My brother laughed out loud. My father smirked like he just won an argument we'd been having my entire life. Someone in that cold lawyer's office actually said figures under their breath. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. Instead, I sat there, staring at those two bills in my hands, feeling 28 years of being invisible finally confirmed in front of everyone who mattered. My name is Nora, and in my family, I was always the quiet one. Not the smart one like my brother Archer. Not the ambitious one like my father. Just quiet. Easy. The one who didn't ask for much because asking felt like begging, and begging felt like proof that I wasn't enough. While Archer learned how to command a room, I learned how to fade into the background. While my parents praised his confidence and his bright future, they described me with softer words. Nora is sweet. Nora doesn't cause trouble. Nora is easy. What they really meant was, Nora won't fight back. My grandfather Theodore was different. To everyone else, he was this untouchable billionaire, the guy who built an empire from nothing, who made bankers nervous and politicians return his calls within minutes. But to me, he was just Grandpa Theo, the man who drank his coffee black, hated small talk, and believed silence told you more about a person than words ever could. When his health started failing, suddenly everyone got very busy visiting him. My father would stop by in his expensive suits, check his watch twice, and say, "Dad, just wanted to see how you're doing. I've got a meeting in 20. My mother brought flowers that wilted in their vases, untouched. Archer came once, stood near the doorway like he might catch something, and said, "Hang in there, Grandpa. You're strong." Then they'd leave, and the room always felt emptier after. I stayed. Not because I thought it would earn me anything. Not because I wanted gratitude or recognition. I stayed because someone had to. I adjusted his pillows when his breathing got shallow. I read him the newspaper when his eyesight started going. I listened to the same stories over and over without correcting him, even when I knew every word by heart. One afternoon, sunlight coming through those hospital blinds all weak and tired, he reached out and grabbed my hand. His grip was fragile but deliberate. "Hear that?" he asked softly. "Hear what?" "The quiet," he said. "Most people are terrified of it." He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was memorizing my face. "You're not afraid," he continued. "That's why you're still here." I swallowed hard. "Of course I am." He smiled faintly. "No. You're afraid of being invisible. That's different." I didn't know what to say to that. Another time, late at night when the machines hummed and the world felt a million miles away, he said something that stuck with me. "Money doesn't show who people are," he murmured. "It just removes the mask faster." I laughed softly. "You sound like you're planning something." His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. "Maybe I am." I thought it was just the medication talking. I had no idea he was already deciding who I was going to become. When he passed, he did it quietly. No dramatic last words. No movie moment. Just a slow release of my hand, and then nothing. I remember standing there afterward, unable to move, thinking the same thought over and over, now I really am alone. Because the one person who saw me, who never needed me to be louder or sharper or different, was gone. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect. Simple. Controlled. Black suits, polished shoes, white flowers arranged with surgical precision. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked respectful. And somehow, none of it felt real. I stood near the back, hands folded, watching my family move through the crowd like actors who'd rehearsed their roles too well. My father spoke in low, steady tones, shaking hands. My mother dabbed her eyes at carefully chosen moments. Archer worked the room with confidence, accepting condolences like they belonged to him. Nobody stood beside me. Nobody asked if I was okay. I heard the whispers, though. People trying to be quiet but not really caring if they were heard. So how much do you think he left? I heard the real estate alone is worth a fortune. Archer's probably set for life. Each sentence landed like a small cut. I told myself not to listen. I told myself this wasn't the time. But grief makes you raw in ways you don't expect. At one point, I caught my father's eye across the room. For a second, I thought he might come over. Say something. Anything. Instead, he gave me a short nod and turned back to someone else. Lawyer will contact us next week, I heard him say. We'll handle the details. We. Like I wasn't standing right there. After the service, people left quickly. No lingering. No shared memories. Just polite goodbyes and minds already moving forward to what came next. Money does that. It pulls people forward, never lets them stay in the past too long. I was the one who went back to my grandfather's house that evening. Not my parents. Not Archer. Me. The place smelled like dust and old books. I moved slowly through the rooms, touching familiar things like they might disappear if I didn't. His watch on the dresser. The chair by the window where he'd sit in the afternoons. The desk where he kept his handwritten notes, numbers scribbled in tight, deliberate lines. I sat down in that chair and finally let myself cry. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to let the ache breathe. A few days later, an envelope arrived. Thick paper, formal lettering. Reading of the last will and testament of Theodore Beaumont. The law office address. The date circled neatly in blue ink. My hands trembled as I held it. I didn't expect much. I'd trained myself not to. Still, a small, dangerous thought crept in, maybe he remembered. I had no idea that by the time I walked into that office, everything I believed about my place in this family was about to be tested publicly. The law office was cold. Not temperature cold, feeling cold. Polished wood, frosted glass, leather chairs arranged with perfect symmetry. Like the room itself was reminding us who belonged and who didn't. I got there a few minutes early and took the seat farthest from the head of the table, making myself small out of habit. One by one, my family filed in. My father walked straight to the front like the seat had been waiting for him his whole life. My mother followed, lips pressed into a thin line. Archer came in last, relaxed, confident, already smiling like he knew exactly how this would end. Nobody greeted me. Nobody asked how I was holding up. The lawyer, Nathan Pierce, cleared his throat and opened the folder. We are here to read the last will and testament of Theodore Beaumont, he said calmly. My heart started pounding. Gregory Beaumont, he read first. A total inheritance of $5 million. My father leaned back, satisfaction flickering across his face before he masked it with a solemn nod. Catherine Beaumont. $3 million. My mother let out a breath she'd been holding and reached for my father's hand. Archer Beaumont. $2 million. Archer didn't even try to hide his grin. He glanced at me, raised his eyebrows, and mouthed "Told you." I stared down at my hands. Don't expect anything. You knew this. Nathan paused, turning the page. And Nora Beaumont. The room went quiet. For Nora Beaumont, the sum of $50. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. 50. Not 50,000. Not a symbolic gesture with some sentimental object attached. Just 50. Archer's laugh broke the silence. Wow, he said, shaking his head. That's poetic. Someone else chuckled. I didn't look up to see who. My father smiled, not cruelly, not openly, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose belief had just been confirmed. This proves something, he said lightly. Dad knew who was practical and who wasn't. My mother avoided my eyes completely. I felt heat rise to my face, then drain away, leaving something cold and hollow behind. I waited for the lawyer to say more. Some explanation. Some letter. Some final message. But Nathan simply slid 2 bills across the table toward me. Please sign here, he said. Neutral. Professional. I picked up the money. It felt heavier than it should have. The room buzzed softly around me. Whispers. Shifting chairs. The quiet relief of people who got exactly what they came for. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody asked if I was okay. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stared at those bills in my hands. Because my grandfather had never been careless. And when I tilted the money slightly under the overhead light, I saw it. A tiny mark. So faint it could have been a mistake. Except I knew better. I folded the bills carefully, slipped them into my purse, and stood up. I think we're done here, I said quietly. Nobody stopped me. As I walked out, I heard Archer laugh again behind me. But for the first time, something inside me wasn't breaking. It was waking up. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car in the parking garage beneath that law office. Engine off. Hands wrapped tight around my purse. $50. I pulled the bills out again, smoothing them carefully on my lap. Most people would have shoved them in a wallet and forgotten about them. Or torn them up in anger. Or laughed it off, pretending it didn't hurt. But my grandfather had taught me to look closer. Details, he used to say, tapping the side of his notebook. That's where the truth hides. I tilted the bills under the dim garage light. There it was again. A tiny line, almost like a scratch, near the serial number. Not random. Not accidental. One mark on the first bill. Another on the second. My pulse quickened. I checked the numbers. On one bill, 3 digits were faintly underlined. On the other, 2 more, positioned so precisely they had to mean something. This wasn't a stain. This wasn't wear and tear. Someone had done this on purpose. He did this, I thought suddenly. My grandfather had always been meticulous. He hated leaving things unfinished, hated loose ends. If he wanted to leave me nothing, he wouldn't have bothered with $50 at all. Unless the money wasn't the inheritance. Unless it was the key. I drove across town without really thinking about it, hands tight on the steering wheel. The address came to me instinctively, pulled from memory like a file I'd buried. The old bank. The one my grandfather had used for decades. The one he trusted when he trusted nobody else. The lobby was quiet when I walked in. Marble floors. Soft lighting. The smell of paper and polish. It felt like stepping into a different world, one where voices stayed low and secrets stayed buried. I approached the front desk, heart pounding. I need to speak with the branch manager, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about my grandfather, Theodore Beaumont. The receptionist's expression changed instantly. One moment, please. A few minutes later, I was led into a private office. The man behind the desk stood as I entered. Gray hair, sharp eyes, calm, professional posture. I'm Mr. Carmichael, he said. How can I help you, Miss Beaumont? I didn't waste time. I placed the 2 bills on his desk and slid them toward him. These were left to me in my grandfather's will, I said. And I think he marked them. Mr. Carmichael frowned slightly, then picked up the money. At first, he looked bored, polite, indulgent. Then his eyes narrowed. He leaned closer, turned the bills, checked the serial numbers. And then he stopped moving. The color drained from his face so quickly it startled me. Where did you get these? He asked, his voice suddenly careful. You already know, I replied. From Theodore Beaumont. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up, walked to the door, and quietly locked it. Then he returned to his chair and looked at me with something I hadn't expected. Respect. These markings, he said slowly, are not a coincidence. My breath caught. They're a verification sequence, he continued. And if I'm right, you're the only person who could have brought them here. I felt dizzy. What does that mean? Mr. Carmichael folded his hands on the desk. It means, he said, your grandfather left something outside the will. Something no one else was meant to touch. The room felt suddenly too small. And the money? I asked. He glanced at the bills one more time. The money, he said quietly, was just the invitation. My grandfather's voice echoed in my mind, if you want to hide the truth, put it where no one bothers to look. And for the first time since the will reading, I understood. The real inheritance hadn't been announced in that cold office. It had been placed directly into my hands. Mr. Carmichael didn't rush me. He sat back, studying my face the way someone does when they're deciding how much truth another person can handle at once. Before we go any further, he said carefully, I need to confirm your identity. I nodded, hands trembling as I handed over my ID. He examined it, typed something into his computer, then paused when the screen responded. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. It's exactly as he said, he murmured. As who said? Your grandfather. My heart started racing. Mr. Carmichael stood and walked toward a large steel cabinet set into the wall behind him. He opened it with a key, then another code, moving with practiced ease. There's a private deposit box here, he explained. Registered solely to Theodore Beaumont. It exists outside the will, outside probate. Completely separate. My throat went dry. Why wasn't anyone else told about it? He looked at me then, his gaze steady. Because your grandfather instructed us not to tell anyone, he said. Unless they came with proof. He placed the 2 bills beside a document on his desk. These markings, he continued, are part of a verification system he designed himself. He believed numbers tell the truth if you know how to read them. That sounded exactly like him. I followed Mr. Carmichael down a quiet corridor, the air growing cooler with every step. We stopped in front of a heavy door. He entered a code I didn't recognize. The door opened with a soft click. Inside was a small room lined with secure boxes. He unlocked one and slid it open. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Gold bars, neatly arranged, reflected the light. Folders labeled with company names I recognized instantly. Investment documents. Bonds. Accounts. I felt my knees weaken. This, I whispered. This is approximately $32 million, Mr. Carmichael finished calmly. Conservatively. I covered my mouth, tears blurring my vision. But it wasn't the money that made my chest ache. It was the envelope resting on top of everything else. Plain, cream-colored. My name written in my grandfather's familiar handwriting. Nora. My hands shook as I picked it up. He left that specifically for you, Mr. Carmichael said softly. We were instructed not to open it. Ever. I nodded, barely able to breathe. We returned to the office, and once I was seated, I finally opened the envelope. The paper inside was folded carefully, as if he'd taken his time. As if he knew I would need this. My dear Nora, if you're reading this, it means you saw what others didn't. That already tells me I was right. Tears slid down my cheeks before I could stop them. I gave you $50, not because that's what you deserved, but because I needed you to see the truth with your own eyes. Money doesn't change people. It only removes the excuses. I could hear his voice in my head. Calm. Certain. I wanted you to watch who smiled, who laughed, who stayed silent when you were diminished. Those reactions matter more than any speech at a funeral. My chest tightened painfully. You were the only one who stayed when there was nothing to gain. You didn't ask. You didn't push. You didn't perform. That is why I trust you. I pressed the letter to my chest, my shoulders shaking. He had seen everything. The money in that box is not a reward. It is a responsibility. Protect yourself with it. Build a life that doesn't require you to beg for respect. And when they come, and they will, remember this, love that depends on money was never love to begin with. I wiped my eyes and read the final line. Don't make yourself small again, Grandpa. The silence that followed felt sacred. Mr. Carmichael cleared his throat gently. Your grandfather also left legal instructions. If you choose to proceed, we can establish a trust immediately. Anonymous. Protected. No one can touch it without your consent. I took a deep breath. Outside that office, my family was probably celebrating. Counting. Planning. They thought the story had already ended. But as I folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the envelope, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was the moment everything truly began. They didn't give me much time. 3 days. That's all it took for the truth to leak. I was still processing everything, still replaying my grandfather's letter in my head, when my phone started ringing nonstop. Calls I ignored. Messages I didn't open. Voicemails stacking up like warning signs. I knew who it was. I just didn't expect them to show up in person. It was early evening when the knock came. Not polite. Not hesitant. Sharp and impatient, like the door owed them something. I looked through the peephole. My father, my mother, and Archer, all standing there with practiced expressions, concern mixed with expectation. I took a slow breath and opened the door. Nora, my mother said immediately, stepping forward. We need to talk. They walked in without waiting for an invitation. My father glanced around my apartment, eyes scanning the furniture, the shelves, the quiet space, like he was searching for proof. You kept this place very modest, he said. Interesting. I said nothing. Archer leaned against the counter, arms crossed, smirking. Guess Grandpa didn't think you needed upgrades, huh? I finally spoke. Why are you here? My father didn't hesitate. We know about the account, he said flatly. The one you didn't mention. The air tightened. I don't know what you're talking about, I replied calmly. He scoffed. Don't insult us. Someone at the bank talked. We know it's over 30 million. My mother reached for my arm. I stepped back. Honey, she said softly. This doesn't have to be ugly. We're family. Archer laughed. Yeah, family. That thing you forgot about the second you got rich. Something snapped. Not loudly, but cleanly. You laughed at me, I said. At the will reading. Do you remember that? Silence. When I was handed $50, I continued, my voice steady but sharp. Did any of you stand up for me? Did anyone say it was unfair? My father frowned. That's not the point. It is, I said. It's exactly the point. Archer rolled his eyes. Fine. So what? Grandpa had his reasons. He always favored you anyway. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Nora, please. You know your brother has plans. Investments. This money could help all of us. There it is, I thought. My father's tone hardened. We're not asking. We're telling you to do the right thing. Split it. Keep the peace. I felt my hands shake, but I didn't let it show. The right thing, I repeated. According to who? According to blood, he snapped. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. According to the law, I said, placing it on the table. They froze. What's that? Archer asked. My grandfather's legal instructions, I replied. The ones you didn't know about. I opened the folder and slid the documents toward them. This account is held in trust, I continued. Separate from the will, fully legal, fully protected. My father's face darkened. You planned this. No, I said. He did. My mother whispered, Nora, don't do this. I met her eyes. I'm not doing anything. I'm honoring his wishes. Archer's voice turned sharp. You think you're better than us now? No, I answered. I think I'm done being smaller. My father straightened. If you don't share, we'll challenge it. I nodded once. You can try. But there's a clause in the will. Any legal dispute voids your inheritance. The room went still. Archer's smirk vanished. That's a bluff. It was read out loud, I said. You were there. My father clenched his jaw. My mother looked between us, panicked. You wouldn't, she whispered. I already am, I replied. They stood there for a long moment, realizing they'd miscalculated. Finally, my father turned toward the door. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe. But as the door closed behind them, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was standing my ground. And I knew, without a doubt, this was the moment my grandfather had been preparing me for all along. The silence after they left didn't end that night. It spread. At first, it was subtle. My phone stopped ringing. Group chats disappeared. Invitations I never expected suddenly felt noticeable by their absence. I was removed from the family calendar without a word. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. No messages. No explanations. Just quiet. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. Some nights I sat alone on my couch, staring at my phone, wondering if I'd gone too far. If I'd been too harsh. If choosing myself had meant choosing loneliness. Because nobody really talks about that part. They tell you to set boundaries. They tell you to protect your peace. They don't tell you how empty it can feel at first. My parents didn't call. Archer blocked me on social media. I found out by accident when I tried to check his profile and it simply wasn't there anymore. I stared at that blank screen longer than I should have. So this was it. I'd finally said no. And this was the price. I focused on work. On routine. On keeping my life intentionally small and quiet, just the way my grandfather had lived, despite everything he owned. I didn't buy a bigger place. I didn't change my lifestyle. I didn't post anything online. The money stayed exactly where it was. Protected. Untouched. Invisible. Because the truth was, money had never been the thing I wanted. What I wanted was safety. Weeks later, I stood in a courthouse hallway, signing documents to finalize the trust. The lawyer explained everything carefully, emphasizing words like protection, consent, control. "This ensures no one can pressure you," she said gently. "Not now. Not later." I nodded. Pressure had defined my entire upbringing. This was the first time I felt free from it. Life moved forward in small, quiet ways. I met Ella a year later. She was born on a rainy Tuesday morning. Tiny. Red-faced. Perfect. When the nurse placed her in my arms, something inside me rearranged itself completely. I looked down at her and made a promise I didn't say out loud. You will never have to earn love by shrinking yourself. My parents didn't come to the hospital. They didn't send flowers. They didn't ask. And surprisingly, that no longer shattered me. Because as I watched Ella sleep against my chest, her small fingers curled around mine, I understood something my grandfather had known all along. Family isn't defined by who shows up when there's money on the table. It's defined by who stays when there's nothing to gain. Still, sometimes late at night, when the world was quiet, I wondered if this distance was permanent. If the door I'd closed would ever open again. I didn't chase the answer. I'd learned that peace doesn't come from fixing people who don't want to change. It comes from choosing a different future. And I was finally ready to build one, even if I had to do it without them. Life didn't change overnight. There was no dramatic victory scene. No apology tour. No sudden realization from my family. What changed was quieter than that. Safer. I moved slowly. Intentionally. I worked with lawyers and advisors who answered to me and only me. The trust my grandfather had prepared became a wall I didn't have to explain, justify, or defend. For the first time, nobody could corner me with guilt. Nobody could threaten me with family. Nobody could make me smaller for their comfort. And I didn't feel powerful. I felt protected. As Ella grew, I built a life the way my grandfather had taught me. Simple on the surface. Strong at the core. I invested carefully. I set aside a future for her education. I donated quietly to causes that supported women who needed legal protection, women who were told that's just how family is. Because I knew how dangerous that sentence could be. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I regret not sharing. If I regret walking away. If I regret being labeled cold or selfish. I don't. Because regret comes from acting against your own truth. And for once, I hadn't. My grandfather didn't leave me $50. He didn't even leave me millions. He left me clarity. He showed me who would laugh when I was humiliated, who would stay silent, who would only reach for me when they needed something. And more importantly, he showed me who I was when I finally stopped asking for permission to exist. The last thing he gave me wasn't money. It was the courage to say no, the strength to stand alone, and the freedom to build a family that would never confuse love with control. When I look at Ella now, laughing without fear, growing without conditions, I understand the true inheritance. Not wealth, not revenge, not validation, peace. And that was worth more than every dollar he left behind. Thanks for listening, and if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the quiet moments and choosing yourself when no one else will. The people who matter don't make you feel small, and the people who make you feel small don't matter.